She was nobody. She had nothing to do with that. You know what I'm saying? She can't help the way she was born. She was born as a white person. She's a decent, respectful human being, a lovely young lady who goes out there and performs at the highest level.
Steven has broken his silence after a shocking racist attack on Caitlin Clark, sending shockwaves through the sports world. Known as the WNBA's Golden Star, Clark has been rewriting history with her record-breaking performances, but she's now facing a darker side of fame. Outspoken as ever, Smith isn't just defending Clark. He's shining a spotlight on a deeper issue that's been festering in women's sports. Racist trolls have targeted Clark with vile messages and threats, something no player, especially one who's elevated the league to unprecedented heights, should ever have to endure. This isn't just a call to protect one athlete. It's a call to address a systemic problem that can no longer be ignored.
What does she do? She goes out in the WNBA and she balls out there as well, and she ends up being a league MVP candidate as a rookie.
And who better to call out the hypocrisy and dysfunction in the system than Stephen A. Smith? He's not holding back, not only taking aim at the trolls, but also exposing the deeper issues within the league that fuel this toxic environment. Smith is demanding accountability, highlighting the need for change at every level to protect players like Caitlin Clark and to create a healthier, more inclusive space for women's sports.
Caitlin Clark, all right? The Indiana Fever star was named Time Magazine's Athlete of the Year earlier this week.
The headlines are brutal, and the tweets even worse. Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's shining star, finds herself at the heart of a storm unlike anything we've seen before. Sure, the playoff pressure is intense, but add to that a playoff injury followed by a racist, threatening email. This is a whole new level of madness. In 2024, sports fans have somehow morphed from passionate supporters to full-blown internet trolls. Unfortunately, Clark, one of the most talented athletes of her generation, has become their latest target. Way to keep it classy, internet.
I think it was incredibly important to a lot of the sisters that have played in the WNBA. I also think it embarrasses black players, former, present, or whomever, who may, dare I say, have spoken against Caitlin.
But here's the twist. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a disturbing trend. A rising tide of hatred aimed at WNBA players, peaking during the playoffs when emotions run high and common sense goes out the window. Instead of celebrating athletes who are shattering records and redefining women's basketball, some fans are throwing racist slurs and threats around as if it's a sport in itself. Caitlin Clark wasn't having any of it. She called these trolls exactly what they are, trolls, not misguided fans or passionate supporters, just trolls. In her own words, nobody in our league should be facing any sort of racism, hurtful, disrespectful, hateful comments and threats. You'd think such a basic, universally agreed upon statement would go unquestioned, but in today's internet culture, even basic decency is up for debate. Clark's message wasn't just about standing up for herself. It was a broader statement for the entire WNBA community. Why should these athletes, who already have to fight tooth and nail for airtime, sponsorships, and recognition, also be forced to battle this level of toxicity? Is it the ripple effect of a male-dominated sports world seeping into the fan base? Or is it something uglier? Something we'd rather not face?
Time to acknowledge that race played a role in her success this year. Here's a passage from the article in Times Magazine. Quote, "I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege."
Enter Stephen A. Smith. Never one to hold back. Armed with a microphone and an opinion sharper than a three-pointer in crunch time, this guy doesn't tiptoe around issues. He kicks the door down and starts talking. And boy did he talk. Smith called out the racial bias he believes is behind Caitlin Clark's popularity, stating, "If you're white, you're bright, you're right." While he acknowledged Clark's undeniable talent on the court, he refused to let the conversation end there. He pointed the finger at the system, the fans, the media, and society, declaring, "This isn't just about basketball." Then came Smith's million-dollar question. Is Clark's silence complicit? Let's break that down. Clark has been vocal about the abuse she's faced, publicly condemning it without hesitation. But critics argue that while she's quick to call out racism aimed at her, she hasn't done enough to speak out against the racist attacks targeting her fellow players. Is that a fair critique? Or is it asking too much from an athlete already carrying the weight of an entire league on her shoulders?
What I actually say. The subject matter was Caitlin Clark. And you got people out there like Andrea Carter and Janae and others talking about merit. And Monica McNutt to
Of course, Smith's remarks didn't sit well with everyone. Shocking, right? A man known for saying the quiet part out loud certainly ruffled a few feathers. But did he back down? Not a chance. He doubled down on social media, making it clear that his goal wasn't to diminish Clark's achievements, but to expose a much larger issue. And honestly, isn't it the point of sports commentary? To make us uncomfortable, to challenge the status quo, and to force conversations we'd rather avoid? This isn't just about Caitlin Clark. She's the flashpoint, sure, but the real story is much bigger. It's about a league fighting for equality, a fan base that sometimes reveals its ugliest side, and athletes caught in the crossfire. And let's not forget the irony here. The WNBA has fought tooth and nail to get to this point. They've battled for visibility, respect, and a seat at the table. Now that they're here, they're dealing with the same old garbage that's plagued sports for decades: racism, sexism, and a fan culture that often feels more like a battleground than a community.
When she came into the WNBA, for 22 plus years, they had been flying commercial. They were begging for chartered flights. She arrives there, and 2 weeks later.
Let's talk about Caitlin Clark because honestly, you can't talk about the WNBA right now without mentioning her name. The Iowa Hawkeye turned Indiana Fever sensation has taken the league by storm. She's breaking records, stealing headlines, and pulling in endorsements like it's a full-time job. But as her star rises, so does the heat around her. Is she a basketball prodigy? Undoubtedly. But has she also become a racial lightning rod in the process? Oh, absolutely. Clark's rise has been nothing short of meteoric. She's putting up insane numbers on the court, averaging 27.7 points per game in her rookie season, and she's carrying herself with a confidence that demands attention.
Women, that's going to be a beautiful thing, end quote. You see why I had no problem with her being Times Athlete of the Year?
She's a fan favorite, and for good reason. Her deep threes, court vision, and fiery personality make for some seriously entertaining TV. But let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Her popularity comes with a racial undercurrent that can't be overlooked. This raises a tough question. How much responsibility does Clark bear for her fans' behavior? On one hand, she's not the one making these comments or sending hateful messages. But on the other hand, when you're the face of the league, do you have an obligation to address the toxic elements of your fan base? Thomas seems to think so, and she's not alone. It's definitely upsetting. Nobody in our league should be facing any sort of racism, hurtful, disrespectful, hateful comments and threats, she said. But let's be real, this isn't just about Clark or Thomas. This is a league-wide issue that's been simmering for years. Racism in sports isn't new, and the WNBA is no exception. Remember Liz Cambage? The former All-Star spoke out about the racism she experienced, both from fans and within the league itself. Or how about Natasha Cloud? She's been one of the most outspoken players on social justice and has faced her fair share of backlash for it. These aren't isolated incidents, they're part of a pattern. So, what's the WNBA doing about it? Honestly, not enough. Sure, the league has made statements condemning racism and promoting inclusivity, but words only go so far. Where's the action? Where are the programs to educate fans or the systems to hold them accountable? The league prides itself on being progressive, but when it comes to protecting its athletes from this kind of abuse, it feels like they're always playing catch-up. Let's talk about Stephen H. Smith. If there's one thing the man knows how to do, it's light a match and set the internet ablaze. When Smith dropped his now infamous line, "If you're white, you're bright, you're right," social media exploded. Half the world was like, finally, someone said it, while the other half screamed, "How dare he?" Classic Stephen A. Always walking that fine line between truth-telling and controversy-stirring, never apologizing for it. But let's not forget the people at the heart of this mess. Players like Caitlin Clark and Alyssa Thomas, who are living this chaos every single day. The emotional toll on these athletes goes way beyond the court. For Clark, it's not just about playing basketball. It's about balancing the highs of fame with the lows of being a target for trolls. Remember that racist email she received? That's not just hurtful, it's the kind of thing that sticks with you, something you think about when you're supposed to be focused on sinking free throws or running drills. And where's the league in all this? That's the million-dollar question. The WNBA has been loud about social justice, but when it comes to protecting its players from this kind of abuse, it feels like they're all talk and no action. Racism in sports isn't new, but it's 2024. How is this still happening on such a massive scale? This brings us back to Stephen A. Smith. Love him or hate him, his comments are a wake-up call. He's forcing us to confront some ugly truths about sports culture, fandom, and ourselves. And it's uncomfortable, but maybe it's exactly what we need. The conversation shouldn't just be about Caitlin Clark or Alyssa Thomas. It's about changing the culture of sports for good. It's about asking the hard questions. Are we, as fans, failing these athletes by not holding ourselves accountable? Are the leagues doing enough to protect their stars? Or are they complicit in their silence? Let's stop pretending this is just a sports issue. It's bigger than that. It's about humanity, respect, and dignity. And if we can't get that right, then what are we even doing here?